Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of 100 Days of Visibility, but day 1 of 100 Days of Moss live. I got a message from my teacher, Perry Chase, yesterday, and she said, I have an upper level game for you. She said, I want you to do 100 Days of Moss. Now, those of you who don't know, like, why is Steph talking about moss? Last year, was it last year? Maybe a year and a half ago, I went through a shamanic journey with my teacher, and I discovered a lot in that process. One of the key things being is that most of my life, I've learned how to be a very fiery person. I've learned how to be combative. I've learned how to be strong-willed. I've learned how to be the essence of fire. Because being the essence of fire was how I learned to survive things. It's how I learned how to survive being an only child. It's how I learned how to survive growing up in a rural community. It's how I learned how to survive being only half Italian in an Italian family. How to survive the conversations with extended family members. How to survive going into the big city from a small town for university. It was being fire was this thing that was adapted. Because the way that I saw the world was that fire was respected. And so if I could be that, then I would be respected by people. That I would be acknowledged and I would be appreciated. I would be honored for the things that I've done because I was fiery. And I remember breaking down in tears because, my teacher said, she was like, is that true though? Like, are you fire? And I was just like, no. Every day, my nervous system feels like it's singeing. I'm more like moss. And the words flew out of me. And I didn't know what it meant at the time. And even since then, it's almost like I don't really know. And at the time, it was almost like everybody knew. Like everybody, the moment that it came out that, oh yeah, Steph's not really doesn't have the essence of fire. She has more of the essence of moss. The more it came out, people are like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. This totally makes sense. But it didn't make sense to my mind. It didn't make sense to my ego and the whole identity that was built around being this fiery person who could get shit done. Who was great at being independent and not needing people and was pretty much always unstable. And so as I have learned to try to lean into moss, I've really come bumped up against all different kinds of my own personality deflections. Because there's no concrete thing, right? There's no book to turn to and say, this is what moss is, and now I have to be that. It's the discovery of what holding the essence of moss is for myself. And coming out with the philosophies of that. Like being loud about it, being public about it. And so I'm starting over today with 100 Days of Moss, as in, let's explore life through the lens of moss, of the essence that I hold naturally, even though I'm not cognitively aware of it. And the first thing that really comes to mind is how moss itself is grounded, but it's never rooted. It is down to earth, but is never stagnant. It will grow on what is still. And it will navigate to wherever the wind blows it. Which, when you look at that as like a way to live life, is pretty open and fluid and airy and yet so earthy at the same time. And when you look at my astrological chart, you're like, well, wait a minute, Steph, you're Sagittarius sun and a Leo rising. You're bound to be a fiery person. But the essence that I hold is actually not the same as the astrological elements. See, when I actually lean into my sun sign Sagittarius, It's the wanderer. It is the traveler. It is the promiscuous one. And when you really think of those two things, you start to think of like people who travel, who have to be as low to the ground as possible, but never rooted in one area. They can't be too loud or too identifying, because then they'll get stuck in one location. Moss. As I started to dive further into what moss frequency is, the essence that I hold, one of the things that kept bubbling up is how hard I've pushed away love and how dogmatic I got about it. I remember having a timeline. By 27, I was going to be engaged. By that time, I would have been living with my partner for 2 years. And prior to that, we would have been together for probably 3. And we would have met in class. There was this whole timeline that I had. And then as life happened, I was like, I don't want that. At 25, I wasn't in a relationship. I was traveling. And when I was 26, I couldn't fathom the idea of living with somebody again. At 27, I was just diving into the depths of my spiritual growth work, my personal development work. At 27 is when I found moss, actually. And to go back to this spot of being grounded but not rooted, there's something that I have to share about this, because this is something that I've struggled with, because everyone around me was like so rooted in the way life needed to be, and I was fairly unattached. Like, I could accept that things could be different. I have never really been attached to one location, so even when I left high school, it was like, oh, I'm moving. And I couldn't get to this spot where everyone else seemed to be like, how could you uproot your life? And I was like, you can't uproot anything if you're never rooted. You're simply moving where you need to be. And so as I've moved through life, there was ways like I was forcing myself to stay because that's what was expected, or so I thought. That's how you were supposed to do life. You were supposed to be rooted in your ways. And the truth of things is that I really don't care about a lot. Like, I'm actually not that stuck in a particular way of being. In fact, most of the time when I look at someone who is rooted, I can respect it, but I'm like, that's not for me. Because I don't need my life to be in any one direction forever. I'm accepting that right now I'm going this path, and that path may diverge, and I will move where the wind blows me. And there's more fluidity there, which ironically moss holds a tremendous amount of water. And I need that. I need the ability to be fluid in my choices and the way that I live my life, and never being too rooted in any one method, which makes most bodies of work really hard for me to accept, because business school said you run a business XYZ way. When I did Landmark, it was you show up in XYZ way. And they don't stick and they don't last, because I don't ever show up one way forever. And that is one of the harder parts of being someone who holds this frequency, because you're never the same. And it was really hard for me to actually accept that I'm not who I once was, and I'm not who I will be, and I'm in this consistent transitionary period, and this is actually the spot where I'm going to be able to honor my own essence a little easier, a little deeper. Because I'm living the epitome of it. And so as, time has gone by, there's been times where I've thrashed against my own essence, and there's been times where I fought others against it, and where I was really disgusted by it. Because to me, people who have a mossy essence were totally lazy, couldn't make money, were highly victimized, And I was interpreting mossy essences for people who actually have more swampy essences, which is a totally valid and okay thing. But I had this judgment that that's what moss was. I was like, oh, these earthy fucking people, fuck them. Fuck these earthy people who are lazy and unproductive, and I have to carry them on my back. There was a whole thing about it. Until I realized that that wasn't fucking moss. You see, moss is the cottage life. It is slow living. It is very deliberate and intentional, and yet so fluid and unrooted. There's a particular nature to this. And in different moments, I'll catch it. I'll catch how easy moss can actually be, and how the essence of moss is really a medicine for a lot of people, because this nature of being unrooted. I always keep coming back to that, because in October, I actually went on the greatest date of my life. He was taller than me. He was handsome. He had a delicious handshake. He had very strong arms. I felt enveloped in his presence, even though he was thinner than me. I felt like I couldn't break this man. He was strong enough. We talked the whole day. In fact, we extended the date from just being lunch to getting our oil changed and going for a walk afterwards, because neither one of us wanted it to end. He took a photo of me on our first date. And it is a photo that blew up on Facebook because I hadn't smiled like that in a really long time. But the thing is that it wasn't that I was smiling because I found this guy. Because, oh my God, I found the one. I found the one I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. The one who checks all the boxes. The one who has my heart rate pumping. The one who puts me in my involuntary just by saying my name or smiling at me. There was none of that. It was, I had the greatest date of my life today, and I was present for all of it. And if it never happens again, I regret nothing. If it never happens again, this was still a date that I appreciate. Even if I never see him again, it won't be the worst news, because I got to see him at least once. And I remember sharing that with people and then being like, what the fuck are you talking about? Obviously, it couldn't have been that good if you don't want to see him again. That's not what I said. It's not that I would love to see him again. I would be elated to see him again. And if I don't, the world's not going to fall apart. Because I am whole and complete even when I'm alone. It's just that I really appreciated that day. And it was a mind fuck for so many people. Because they were like, no. If you had a great time, then like you want to see him again. I do want to see him again. That's not what I'm saying. If I never see him again, it's not the worst news. The worst news would have been that I somehow went back in time and that we never met. The worst news would have been that he never wanted to see me again and all of that was a lie. And that I was making it up. The worst news would have been that was a dream and none of it was real. That would have been the worst news. But the worst news being that we're not going to see each other again doesn't take away from the fact that I had a great date with this man. And so I was totally unattached. Totally unrooted in him needing to be my man. And I got to just stay present and stay grounded in the moment, present with him. And then when he went away for work, we didn't really talk. And there was no unnecessary heartbreak about it. There was no pain. There was no, oh my God, I just want to see this man. There was none of that. It was me continuing on with my life. It was like this blip of pure ecstatic joy that did not take away from the rest of my life. It was like two tangential experiences. There's my daily life, of which I love, and then there's this moment that got to be a part of that. How amazing is that? That one moment didn't make or break my life. It was just another moment to experience. And so, flash forward a couple months later, he texts me and he says that he's coming into town and he'd like to see me. But at this point, it was late at night and I was like, I would love to see you too, but I'm way too tired tonight. I'm not going to be able to make it into the city. And he said, okay, I understand. We didn't see each other. Now, most people who would be talking about dating and relationships and love and opening your heart again would be like, oh my God, that is such a faux pas. Here's this guy, you said you wanted to see him again, and then he's coming into town and you didn't drop everything for him. And I didn't drop everything for him. Because see, dropping everything for a hit of attention, for a rail, to do a hit of somebody's affection, to drop everything, that's what addicts do. And I'm taking a sober approach to my love life. And so I did a faux pas thing, and I did not drop everything for him because he said he wanted to see me. Instead, I said, next time you come in, let me know a couple hours in advance. Well, flash forward to today, I get a text message. Keep in mind, I have not reached out to this guy once. I have not went out of my way to say hello. I have not went out of my way to see how he was doing. I've just let it be. I get a text message saying that he's coming into town tonight. And it was about 4:00. And I would love to see him. Keep in mind, our first date was in October. It is now March. And I would love to see him again. And I was like, well, how long are you staying? And he says, well, I typically only stay for a night. Maybe in the future I'll stay longer. Okay. I said, is that night tonight or is it tomorrow? And he says, I'll be in town about 9 p.m. tonight. I said, okay. Can I meet you for breakfast? And he says, are you not free tonight? And the reality is by 9 p.m. I'm way too tired to drive. And so again, it's not me dropping everything to go see this man. It's, I want to see you, yes, and I know my own range. I know that tonight would not be a good night for me. And so I asked him, I said, let me know what time you're leaving town. And, you know, if it works out schedule-wise, because I've got some things going out tomorrow and I don't want to feel compressed and not be able to see him, that I'll show up with breakfast. And he said, I'll let you know. Sounds great. And he's driving, so I didn't want to keep texting him. But the way that I relate to him is far different than I've related to other men in my life when I came from like the fiery side. So the fiery side is like, let's blow this man up. Let's give this man all of the attention. Let's show him how amazing I am, because I am amazing. This isn't like, it's not a lie. But it was so much more like loud, and it was so much more hot and intense. Versus when I actually drop into more of a moss essence of that's my natural, right? That is the nature of my heart. It's not like that. It's like, I'll see you when I see you. And if you want to see me, we'll see each other. That's just the way that it goes. I'm not going to stop my life because you have a couple ideas. I'm not going to drop everything like a druggie addict of love to have your attention for just an hour. I'm going to stay in myself and know that if you're choosing me, it's because you're choosing me centered. It's not because you're choosing me loud and because I grabbed for your attention. And I think this is one of the spots where why moss medicine was something I pushed away for myself and totally denied was because I hadn't ever seen it done before. I hadn't really ever seen the women around me embody that. The women around me were always embodied like, you have to fawn over your guy. You have to make sure that he knows you're interested. You have to be texting him all the time. And there was just something that I couldn't meet there. And so I would fake it, and I would be like all over somebody, but it would never last because sustainability factor, I didn't have the life force to sustain that. And so I would have these really hot, intense, short-lived exchanges with people. But flash forward 4 months later, I couldn't hold that pose. And so they were picking a false version of me and then wondering why they weren't interested anymore once like my heart was like, okay, like we can't do this anymore. Let's just show who we are. And part of the beauty of this slow way of living is that I don't have to be ashamed of my process and I don't have to be embarrassed about it. Versus when I was pretending to be fire, my learned trauma response, if you will. There was this sense of shame that when someone would say that they liked me, there was this sense of shame in the fact that I never was able to say it back, because my heart was always moss. It was just my personality, my identity that was fire. And so there was a sense of shame of my heart's not there yet. Oh no, there must be something wrong with me that my heart's not there yet. There must be something wrong with them if my heart's not there yet. Oh, why is my heart not on top of this? The truth is, my heart just takes a fucking while. My heart is is this the person for me? Are they strong enough to be with me? Are they able to stay centered in themselves? Because this is the other thing too, is as I was fire, I was also very consuming. And so I would pick men who I could devour in flame. They would lose themselves in me. And it was almost a laughing joke for a lot of my friends, because they're like, Steph, you always pick these very seemingly frail men, because they will lose themselves in you. They will follow you like a puppy dog. And as long as I was projecting this idea of flame, that's what I needed to sustain it. So as I come back into the nature of my own heart, into my essence of moss, it's oh, right. I don't want that. I don't want a man who's going to follow me around. I want a man who's going to be himself. And so he needs to be able to be himself. And when he picks me, see that I'm always going to be me. I'm not going to leave my center to consume who he is or consume his life. Instead, I'm just going to be here. And I'm going to move where I need to move. I'm going to grow where I need to grow. And if you were going to be there with me, that's a choice that you get to make. And this is one of the other things. So aside from not being rooted in any one way of living and just staying grounded, the next level is well, let's not be consuming of other people, because if we're actually just in our center, we don't need to be that showy. We don't need to be that loud. People will gravitate towards us. The right ones, the ones who are actually interested in the nature of our own heart, will show up. The ones who want to get warmed by a fire, let them go be where there's fire that is sustainable. Because I can only do that for so long before I burn out, before I combust, before my nervous system is singeing and I can no longer sustain it. And so then it moves into this spot of I'm always going to be me. My heart isn't actually ever going to change. My heart actually isn't fazed by my identity and the identities that I hold. My heart is always consistent. It takes a while for me to warm up to somebody. I fall in love really slow. When I fall, it's important. I don't just fall for anybody. That I live my life in accordance to my nature. And therefore, whoever chooses me is choosing it because they are opting into that, not into a perception, not into an identity, not into something I can't sustain forever. And so, even with this guy from October, November, December, January, February, March, I haven't seen him in 5 months. And yet somehow I'm still the woman that he's going to choose to call. And trust me, that I'm not the only woman he had matched on Tinder. There's not a fucking chance. I just happened to be the one that he wanted to see again. And he wanted to see me again, not because I showed up as fire. I just showed up. And I let myself be seen. And when I tell you that this man on our date used the word enchanting, I was like, okay. I'm showing up right. I'm showing up as who I am. And he is responding to that. He's not responding to all the flashy stuff that's traveled the world, that has done all these crazy wild things with her unsustainable fire personality. But he's choosing to hang out with Steph's heart. The nature of my heart is slow, and it has been 5 months, and yet he's still choosing to contact me. No effort on my end. But also no attachment. Meaning, again, I could not see him tomorrow, and that won't take away from the fact that I had an amazing date with him back in October. See, this is the crazy thing, right? It's when we look at love and dating in most relationships, yeah, I've seen it everywhere where people are like, oh my God, they must be the one, that's going to be the one you marry. Yeah, but what if it's not? If he's not the one you're going to marry, are you going to regret all the experiences you had with him? And the sad thing is that most people do. is that most people, if their outcome, if their goal isn't met, they will disregard everything that happened between now and then. Wasn't worth it. What a quote-unquote waste of time. Was it though? Because I did not waste a whole day with him ever. That day was amazing. And I will continue to have amazing dates like that in the future. And they do not need to be with him, although I would love for them to be. My heart is still whole, even if it's not. And I think this particular practice isn't one that I've really ever shared with people. And they wonder why. They're like, well, Steph, you're just not interested in people. And I'm like, no, it's not that at all. And I remember years ago, a girlfriend asked me, she's like, Steph, when was the last time you really liked somebody? I remember feeling heartbroken because I hadn't been living a life that was slow enough to allow me to do that. I wasn't living a life where I could get to know somebody over the course of a series of months and fall in love with them. I wasn't living a life where I could hang out with someone for a while and just appreciate them. It wasn't a thing. I was pretending to be fire. I was having this personality that was all-consuming, hot, intense expression all the time. And then I would burn out and I would retract. And because of that cycle, my heart could never actually get to the point where I would like somebody. And so over the course of time, there's maybe been only less than a handful of guys I've actually really liked. Like genuinely where my heart was like, oh my God, this person. But even in that spot, there was this like unattachment to that like. I like you, but I don't need to like you forever. So if this isn't forever, I'm okay with it. And I remember with my college boyfriend, I was at the pub, the university pub with him and all of his friends. And I remember getting into a fight with one of his buddies. I'll never forget this conversation because he was pissed at me. Not my boyfriend, his buddy. And he's like, I told him I don't believe in commitment. And he's like, excuse me? How fucking dare you disrespect my best friend right in front of him? And I was like, no, it's not disrespectful. I don't believe in commitment. He's like, what the fuck do you mean? And he's like losing it on me. And I was like, I believe in choice. And every day I wake up and I choose him. And I can't imagine choosing anybody else. And the day where I wake up and I no longer choose him is the day that we break up. And I would hope that the day that he wakes up and no longer chooses me, he would do the same. And I remember just people looking at me like I was on crack cocaine. But when you really sit with that, would you rather somebody be committed to you or someone choose you every day? If you choose the latter, then you also have to choose that there may be a day that they don't choose you anymore. So you can't be attached to it. You can't have that person be a goal. You can't have that person be the necessary means to an end. You can't have them be the outcome. You have to actively choose it every day. And it's funny because I didn't really think of how that was Moss until just now, because I remember speaking and the way that I spoke, my voice was like several octaves lower. And I remember him getting to be fiery with me. And I was just like, okay, you okay, bud? But because I was so centered in myself, he couldn't penetrate it. He couldn't singe me. There was no part of me that was dry and ready to be set on fire with his intensity. And instead, I was just so saturated in myself and being like, yeah, no, I don't believe in commitment. And I didn't realize that that was something that I've always thought. It's something that I've always known. I don't want someone to be committed to me because they're married to me. I don't want someone to be with me because we've been together for so many years. I never want that. And it's funny because I remember one of my best friends, God, this woman has put up with so much shit with me. And she's actually been with me through a dozen phases. And I remember we finished college and she moved back home into one of the territories. And she called me, it was Christmas, and she goes, guess what, Steph? And she shows me on FaceTime that she's engaged. And I was like, oh my God, amazing. Like, congratulations. Like, what had you say yes? Which is such a fucked up question to think about it. Like, why would you ask someone that? But I asked that because I have balls that drag that low. And she goes, well, it was just the next step. And my heart fell. And no friend that I know would ever say what I said to her that day. And I said, that's not why you say yes to somebody, to spend the rest of your life with them. And how she didn't kill me that day, I don't know. I don't know how she did it. She's a much stronger person than I am. But how she didn't get angry, and how she didn't beat me up, and how she didn't get upset that I wasn't happier for her. I was happy, but I was heartbroken. I wanted to see my best friend happy. But I wanted to see her happy because that was the next thing for her heart, not because it was the next thing for her timeline. Flash forward, I think it was maybe 6 months, and she called it off. And you could totally blame me for that, 100%. But now she's with a man who I couldn't imagine her with anybody else. They travel the fucking world together, and that was all she wanted. He loves her, and the way that he takes care of her, and the way that they interact with each other. I only met him, last year. And I'm like, yeah, he's a better fit. He's a better fit for my best friend's heart. See, I don't really understand why love became a game, or how it became a game, or why we thought it was a worthwhile game to play. But the plays that people are making don't work. I don't think that they make anyone feel more loved or loving. I don't think they do that at all. And I think it becomes this space of, are we choosing it? Are we choosing to love with the nature of our own hearts? Are we being rooted in a way of being that's not actually true? Are we attached to things needing to be a particular way? Do we see life in a timeline? Or do we wake up every day and actually say, this is what I'm going to choose, and I'm going to choose it regardless of what happens. And even if my worst case scenario does happen, it's not going to take away from everything that has happened thus far. Even if I never see the guy from October ever again, I don't regret meeting him. I don't regret going on a date with him. I don't regret kissing him in the middle of the park. I regret none of it. Do I want to see him again? Absolutely. But is my life over if I don't? Not at all. I don't believe in commitment because I believe that being unrooted was probably the most important thing to me, because then I get to freely choose the people I'm around and freely choose the people I know, not because I've been with them for so long, not because we have a ring commitment, not because there's some sort of dogma or set of rules of who I should be, but every single day I show up and I choose to be the person that I am, and I choose the people that surround me actively. To know that you are not a passive choice is something that I value. I never want to be a passive choice. I want someone to wake up and be like, yep, that woman right there, choosing her today. And I'm going to choose her tomorrow, and I choose her the next day and the day after that. And that's, we're going to just take it day by day. But every day thus far, I choose her, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And if tomorrow she doesn't choose me, my life doesn't hurt. My life doesn't fall apart. I might have some pain and some heartbreak, but I don't regret any of it. And I think that's what's also interesting is, even in the relationships I've had that have ended, even in the most heartbreaking ones, I don't regret them. Even the ones that put me in physical body hives, and the ones that had me spin out without being able to sleep, the ones that had me sick to my stomach, the ones that were by definition toxic, I don't regret them. I'm glad that one day I finally chose me over the rules of the relationship, and that in choosing me, I no longer chose him. That I'm grateful for. But because I did that, I didn't stop appreciating what we did have. See, when you wake up and you choose you, simultaneously you choose what matches that. So when I chose me, I was no longer going to choose the guy who would yell at me until 4 o'clock in the morning. Instead, when I choose me, I choose the guy who has me smile and laugh in the middle of the park. See, there's a difference there. When you choose you, every choice that follows that that network of choices all align. There is no abandoning the nature of your own heart just to serve that thing. So I'm going to leave you guys with that on the first day of Moss Lives, because I have no idea what I'm doing or what I'm speaking to or what I'm sharing, because I'm not coming from the place of being a teacher on this, because it's just me. I'm not coming from being an expert, because there are no Moss Essence experts out there. But I'm sharing from a place in my heart that I haven't been well practiced in being public with. So I will leave you guys with that. I'm going to read some of the comments here. Yes. Eva, I'm sorry if I got that wrong, says, I love that, the consuming fire of aspect. So those of you that are just tuning in, I was relating to how when I was projecting the personality or the essence of fire, I would consume people. So I needed people who were, in essence, weaker than me to sustain the flame personality. So I would never actually be able to sustain it long term. And so consuming people, consuming relationships, was a way for me to sustain fire, because it wasn't actually natural for me. You're hitting me in the soul, sister. I see the enchantment shimmer in your eye. Yes. This is definitely why, my body of work, enchantment, the 1-year container I have, why it's been working me so hard is because it is my heart in a program. It is my philosophies coming out into the world and not hiding them and not pretending that they're not valuable and not masking them as something else, because really this very slow, intentional, deliberate way of living, of which Moss Essence holds, means that everything I do is a choice, that everything I do is not because I need to control something. It is simply because I get to have an experience. And as long as I get to have the experience, the outcome is the byproduct. If I have a great date with someone, I could have just a great date, or I could have a second great date and a third great date. And then if I end up in a relationship with someone, that just happens to be a byproduct, but that's not the intention. The intention is just to go on the great date. So, yeah, we'll see what the next 99 days take, or show, or come up. But today, that's where I'm going to leave you guys. If you have any questions or want to let me know what you've received from this particular live stream, let me know in the comments, or feel free to send me a direct message. I'm happy to hear them and to field your questions. Bye.